It's Oklahoma week. Two blue bloods head to head. Bama, a lot to play for. Oklahoma trying to play for respect. And Bama heading to Norman on Saturday. We're going to get into what Lane Kiffin said, the head coach of the Rebels, about the SEC championship game, because it looks like if Bama wins out, they're in the game against the winner of that Texas A&M game. Now a lot can change. We're going to talk about that and more on the All-American Report. That's Mike Johnson. I'm Mick Gillispie, brought to you by mybookie.ag. Let's play the best open in podcast history. Well, there he is, the two-time All-American in Alabama, Mike Johnson. Man, I love that open.
It's good stuff. We got to change the picture, though. I don't like the picture.
You know what? I love that picture. The A.
I know, man, but it looks like I'm trying to do the diamond cutter or something. It's like not what I was going for, but it is what it is, man. Nonetheless, good to be hanging out with you again.
Well, it's always great to see you. And you did survive DDP yoga. That's how you lost all that weight after you.
Right. Yeah. You mean the weight in my traps? Used to be no neck Mike, and now it's just shriveled up worm neck Mike. No, man, I need to head down to DDP yoga over now. I think it's in Midtown. I think it's in either Midtown or West Midtown where my radio studios are. So maybe I need to head over there one day. I've heard it's a good time.
That'd be cool, man. Yeah, like I saw where Butterbean went on there, and he got back to where he wasn't walking, and he got back in shape. You know, one of my guys from Jasper.
Nice.
You know, they've saved a lot of lives. I was a huge Braves broadcaster, Ben Ingram, and I. You know this, we've been buddies for a long time, and we absolutely loved Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, the outsiders, right? And it was before his unfortunate passing, and boy, we miss him. But Scott Hall went there, and he brought Scott Hall back to life pretty much, with the DDP yoga. So, but that's in Atlanta, and so if you look like you got a diamond cutter going, nothing wrong with that at all. I love that picture.
Listen, man, I was more of a Sting guy, but it is what it is, man. Just screams 90s. It's good stuff.
Were you a Surfer Sting guy, or were you a
no, God, no. No, man. No, once everybody went dark for a little bit, right? I mean, Macho Man went away from the hot pink, and he went, to black and white, and Hollywood Hogan and all that. Man, that was what a time to be alive that was.
It was. Well, there's a new world order of college football going right now, and it has to do with this college football playoff, NIL, transfer portal, and with the playoff, a lot of these coaches, and I'm going to bring on this clip of Lane Kiffin talking about it, saying what the coaches, really a lot of them probably want to say, but don't feel like it's a good idea to say. And he's talking about I'm going to let the clip play so you guys can hear it. But basically for Alabama, they went out. They're going to be in that SEC championship game. And you can't look ahead. They could lose both of these games. They could win both. They could split. They've got to just take care of business one game at a time, right? And I'm sure that Oklahoma's players are going to give a great effort. Again, I'm sure you heard that Brent Venables' wife is dealing with a reoccurrence of cancer. We are all thinking and praying for the Venables family. He's been nothing but just an upstanding guy in the world of college football for years. So thinking about him, Bama's going into a tough environment to play. They got to stay focused. But just where we are, Bama would be in a 5-way tie for second if everything plays out the way we think it's going to, right? And somehow they're going to be the team of those 5 that is going to Atlanta. And Tyler Booker was asked on the next round, Mike, he said, hey, what is Alabama? Hey, we want to go and win this. We're not looking at it.
Sure.
Then I want to play this clip of Lane Kiffin, and then we'll kind of chew on the whole thing. But let me throw Lane up here, the Lane train, and listen to
Joey.
You know this guy.
What are your thoughts on just what the SEC championship means, or the game means, for teams that maybe like y'all have 2 losses already?
Ooh, it's a challenging question. I don't know. I guess I would say, it's changed. The conference championship, could have a big impact both ways for people. So I've talked to other coaches, so I'll just kind of give you the feeling from some other coaches that, they don't want to be in it. the risk to get a bye, the reward to get a bye versus the risk to get knocked out completely. I mean, that's a really big risk, just to get a bye. So I think it's ended up being a very unique situation of all, postseason sports, the way that system's set up there, and how you could go to that and get knocked out. And if you don't go, you're in. I'm not a big gambler, but that's the kind of one of them Vegas, like poker table thing. Like, that's all in. And you're going all in the best conference in football. So you got to play somebody great too. Very different than a lot of these other conferences.
All right, there you go, man. He said it. Put it out there. Your thoughts?
Well, I think he's right. Unfortunately, that's been one of the you don't always know what you're going to get when you make massive changes to college football in the SEC and college football. And I think he's right. I don't think either team that's going to be in the SEC championship, side for, I guess Texas is probably locked in if they're able to kind of deal with business. And that would be, you're looking at a Texas-Bama matchup right now. If everything kind of holds steady, there's really nothing Bama can do about that. You have to win out in order to get there. If you lose one, you're not going anyways. You're not going to the college football playoff. And at the same time, I think Missouri would have to lose the next two games or lose out in order for Bama to take a back seat. It's just crazy to think about, because then you catch yourself asking the question, does a 3-loss SEC championship game loser still stay in the top 12? Now, personally, I don't think so. I don't think that, after what happened last year, the College Football Playoff Committee is going to be willing to stand up in front of everybody and say that you kept a 3-loss Bama or whoever else it would be in that situation, in the top 12. I think there's just too many other teams that will, quote unquote, be deserving, not the best 12, because they're deserving. That's why they expanded to 12. But I mean, there's so many different crazy scenarios, Mick. I mean, there's a scenario out there that you could look at that says that the Big 12 champion doesn't even get in this. I don't even know if you knew that was a possibility. It's the top 5 conference champions. If Boise State were to win out and Army were to win out, then you'd be looking at, the possibility that a BYU or whoever else doesn't crack that top 5. So a lot of craziness left to go out. And here's where I kind of stand on it, because this has been tossed around a lot, and I'll get your thoughts. The 4 teams that are right there right now at 2 losses, and we'll throw Texas A&M in there as well, or Texas or Texas A&M. Those 4 teams all have a gripe not to be left out right now. But the bottom line is, it's not going to be status quo. We know college football. We know what rivalry weekend is. We know how crazy it is now that Bama's going to Oklahoma this week and playing a game down there. Georgia is still going to match up with a decent Georgia Tech team. Ole Miss, you never know what happens when they play Mississippi State. Tennessee still has to match up with, as we know, a pretty good Vanderbilt team at the end of the year. So there will be craziness, but on the top of it, I agree with Lane. What's the positive side of going to the SEC championship game right now if you're any of those 2-loss teams, that are looking at playing a big matchup? If you only have 1 loss and you're Texas, sure, no harm, no foul, because you're really not losing anything if you were to lose that game. You're going to be, you're going to have a game added to the schedule, but there was no shot you were going to host a home game, I guess, or maybe you will. I don't know, man, but it's just there's a lot to be sorted out. I agree with Lane on the surface, though. There's a lot of downsides to playing in the SEC championship right now.
Crazy thing about Texas is their best win's Vandy. I guess if they make the game, their best win would be Texas A&M. And if they lost, could they be shuffled all the way out of the thing? Like I saw it the other day where it's like somebody with 2 losses is going to be out, right? Is it Tennessee?
Got to be.
Is it Georgia? Is it Ole Miss?
How mad would Ole Miss be? I mean, how mad would Ole Miss be right now?
Golly. But see, if I was Ole Miss, I would think that they would want to be in the SEC championship game because they've never been there before. But when they created this college football playoff from the beginning, I said this right here, it makes the conference championship games irrelevant. And that has, like, they need to get rid of the conference championship games. They just need to, but they're not going to because of the money. But at the same time, I totally get where Kiffin's coming from. But I love the mentality that Alabama's players have, like Booker. Hey, we're there. We want to win this.
Right. And in the end, I love that from Tyler Booker as well, because what can you really do about it? And the bottom line is just win, baby. Right. Just go out there and win the game. I think that's the mentality that they should all have, and hopefully they do. And I know that this is a team that we feel like is on the upswing, but you're going to play a couple of difficult games. Let's be honest. I think people in Vegas look at these as slam dunks. There's nothing slam dunk about going on the road to Norman, Oklahoma. And as we saw just last year, craziness happens on the Iron Bowl. Right. And that can always be a thing. So, the other way to look at what Lane is just saying this, Mick, I'm not sure Ole Miss is a lock to be in this thing. So I think there's another part of me that looks at Lane and I'm like, Lane, I think if anybody should want to be in this thing, it's probably you. You know what I mean? Like if you have the conversation right now, I think Georgia's going to make a big jump tonight in the college football playoff poll. How far do they jump? And then you start getting into all these head-to-heads where there's no good way for the college football playoff committee to do it. There's just no good way. Like you can Georgia jump in front of Alabama, but then you feel like you have to have Tennessee in front of Alabama. But Alabama beat Georgia, and then Ole Miss probably has the most impressive victory of any of them with the way they dealt with Georgia just a couple of weeks ago. So there's no good way to go about it, and you still have, like you said, Texas and Texas A&M still sitting out there. I have no idea what the Big 12 is at this point, other than just not very good. You still are going to have, Colorado could force their way into that and go win the Big 12. Army could really interrupt this thing. I mentioned Boise a minute ago. They could interrupt, what's going on. Boise's a good team. Almost beat Oregon, who's the number one team in the country. So there's just a lot left to be played out. And I think it's fun to throw around these scenarios. I was throwing on Heisman scenarios with you earlier. But in the end, the chaos will ensue. And more times than not, when you have 12 teams, somebody's going to be upset. But really, how much sleep are we going to lose over, the 13th team in the country? I don't really know the answer to that. But I think the major caveat, Mick, to all this is not so much making the playoff as it is posturing for home, away, and first round bye. Right? I mean, like, if you're, and I've talked to Georgia fans, obviously, I live in Georgia. If you're Georgia right now and you're not looking at playing the SEC championship, right? You could possibly be looking at a road trip to Bloomington, Indiana for the first round, which I think that's a probably good matchup in Georgia's favor. Or, you could look at possibly facing the loser of the Big Ten championship game if Indiana's not in that. Right. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And I think I've said it before, not going to your conference championship and being in that 5 to 8, that home playoff range, that's the sweet spot to me. Like, that's where you want to be. And the unfortunate part is I don't know that Bama has a path to get there. I don't know that Bama has a path to be in 5 through 8. I mean, because if you win the conference championship, you're going to be a top seed anyway. So it is what it is at this point.
I thought it was funny where I think it was Joe Klatt that had Ole Miss ahead of Bama and Georgia as far as like the 2 lost teams. And I'm going, come on, dude. Like, Ole Miss
should be ahead of Georgia. Ole Miss beat
but
Georgia.
Ole Miss they lost to Kentucky at home. Like, and they lost to LSU. And look at LSU stinks. Like, Georgia lost at Ole Miss and at Alabama. Those are 2 very respectable losses, right? Plus, they played a hell of a schedule. Bama lost at Tennessee and at Vandy. The Vandy one is questionable, although I know Vandy's way better now than they were in the past, but it was on the road. And then they lost to Tennessee, which is a respectable loss. Ole Miss hasn't played the schedule, and the only win that they have that you really look at and go, okay, that's a great win, was against Georgia, which I'm not taking that away. But Georgia's a better team than me. I know they weren't on that particular day. I'd have it Bama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and then what's the other 2 lost team?
Look, the Tennessee.
Tennessee. Wow, that's weird. But who's Tennessee's best win? I guess Alabama, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's
maybe
pretty
Tennessee
good one.
ahead of Ole Miss. Maybe Ole Miss 4th.
There's no good way to go about it. Listen, I've broke it down. You got the round robin with Georgia, and then, like I said, even though Ole Miss isn't in the round robin, their win over Georgia might be the most impressive of all those wins. So, the real culprit here, Mick, the real culprit is the schedule of Texas and Texas A&M.
Yeah,
like, that's the real culprit in this whole thing. You got Texas A&M gets beat by Notre Dame, and the marquee win for Texas is supposed to be against Michigan, and Michigan's awful. Like, that's like what are, what for being the standard bearers right now as the two top teams really statistically, in the standings of the SEC, you're like, okay, the only hard game Texas has played, they got the crap beat out of them by Georgia. So and it goes back to the same conversations, Mick, and I don't want to dwell on this too long, but it doesn't go back to the same conversations we had 1 year ago with this whole thing. Mm-hmm. Is it the teams that are the best teams, or is it the most deserving teams?
Right.
Is it the best teams or most deserving teams? Most deserving, you'd look at Texas and go, man, did pretty good with their schedule. I mean, they kind of diced through it first year of the SEC. But, I mean, come on, dude. Like, the same thing goes for Indiana right now. Indiana, I saw Mackenzie Brooks on CBS said this. Indiana would be an underdog to 8 SEC teams.
Oh, please give me Indiana. I saw where Bama was up against Indiana and that last Tuesday.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, please, man.
Yeah, well, you know what, and I think it's intriguing to talk about these matchups. You know who I saw Jerry Palm projected? Sugar Bowl, Alabama against Georgia, with Alabama being the SEC champ.
Oh.
Yeah. Now we might be talking about something. I think he had Georgia beating Notre Dame at Notre Dame in round 1 and advancing to play Bama in the Sugar Bowl.
That was a classic last time it happened.
Now we might be. It's just been a classic the last 5 times it's happened. I mean, now we might be talking about something. So I don't know, man. It is what it is. And, we can move into this Oklahoma matchup a little bit, but you got to go deal with business. Like, there's no two ways around it. If you're, and I still have that player mentality. Whoever they're going to put in front of me, I'm going to try to whoop their butt or whoop their ass. I guess we can say it. We're podcasting. I'm not on the radio right now.
Say it.
Yeah, I'm going to try to whoop their ass. You put them in front of me, I'm going to try. Right, I'm going to try to beat their face in, and that's the mentality Bama has to have. And it sounds like Tyler Booker. I've told you before, he's the best. He might be the best interior lineman Bama's had in the last 20 years. And apologies to Chance Warmack, but he also seems to be that leader. And if he's saying those things, I fully believe that, that's what Bama's got going on, because you and I have talked about this before. I do not believe before the college ball playoff last year that Bama sounded like a focused football team.
Right. I don't need
like you kept hearing all this stuff and, the Jalen's talking about nobody believed in him. And I'm like, dude, there's still games ahead of us here. Like we've got to focus in, and hopefully that group learned a lesson from that last year, even though that it's a different head coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw the same thing, man. I saw the exact same thing. When he's talking about Bill O'Brien in that press conference, it made me sick. And that's when I realized, like, we're in trouble and everybody knows I'm a Jalen Milroe fan, maybe a super fan. I really believe in him. I think he's a great athlete. I think he does a whole lot of things right, but you got to stay focused, man. When you start getting off on that stuff, you're not focused on what you need to be focused on. The thing you need to say is, hey, you know what? We're playing Oklahoma this week. We got to take care of Oklahoma. We're playing Michigan last year. We got to take care of Michigan. When he's focused, when he's out there saying, like, you know what? I got something to prove. When he plays with a little chip on his shoulder, oh, he is so good, man. When he's running the football, you can't, like, when he feels like people don't believe in him. Oh, yeah, that's the Jalen Milroe I want. I don't want the one talking about Bill O'Brien. Look, Bill O'Brien stunk. We know that. You didn't even have to say it. He was the most boring. He was like a book without words in it. He was just pictures. It was like there's no substance to that offense. What they're doing now is above and beyond what he brought to the table. I get that. So who cares what that guy says? What you need to be worried about is taking care of Oklahoma. And be ready for Auburn, because last year you stunk against Auburn. You made one big play at the end of the game and got lucky. We need to go in there and take care of business, just like we did the last 3 games. Go in motivated, kick ass, and get to this title game and win that and get a ring. You know what? Then you're a champion again. The game still matters. Now, I get what Lane Kiffin is saying, because he is right. It's a risk. If you're one of those 5 2-loss teams and you go in there and you lose. Think about this. If Texas loses, it's 6 2-loss teams that you're picking from. And
you're only
going to get 4 spots at the most.
Yeah. I mean, it's 2. You got to include Texas A&M in there too, because they're a 2-loss team. So they've kind of fallen down because of what their losses are. They've kind of fallen down because of what their losses are, but you'd have to include them as well. And right behind them is, a South Carolina team that's playing very well right now.
Yeah, 3 losses.
So it's crazy, man. It's crazy.
So,
It's crazy.
So it could be 7 then, is what you're saying. Okay, so Texas, Texas A&M, Bama, Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss.
Yeah, and the leg up, obviously, that Texas A&M has is their non-conference loss to Notre Dame. So
Mhm.
that's why they fit in that category right now. If they were to go beat Texas, then it's a whole nother. I don't even know how. I mean, maybe
Texas is out if they lose that game.
I was
their
going to say. I
strength of
mean,
schedule
you have to
stinks.
look. I don't because Texas is, and it's all about conference record winning percentage, right? Conference opponent winning percentage. I'm sorry, and what's propping Bama up over all these other teams is Bama hasn't played the 2 worst teams in the SEC when everybody has. Bama hasn't played Kentucky and Bama hasn't played Mississippi State.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so no matter what you want to say at the top, what's pushing them towards the SEC championship is not having played those teams when all those other teams have played at least one. And Bama's the low man on the totem pole, I think, is Missouri at this point. And that's why they'd have to lose out the last 2 games. And
Good
I think
team.
they play. I think Missouri plays Mississippi State and maybe Texas. And I can't remember who they played the last week, but yeah. So you
LSU, right? No.
No,
Arkansas.
Oklahoma and LSU play the last week. I know that.
Yeah,
so Missouri might be playing Kentucky. I don't know. I'd have to look at that on the schedule, but that's just you'd have to lose out in that situation. And like you said, I understand what Lane's saying. Lane would be the one of all those teams. If I'm Ole Miss, I would love to play in the SEC championship, but they feel like the hay is in the barn.
Right, and you could guarantee yourself a chance. Okay, that's not it. That's Georgia. Yeah, you would control your own destiny.
Yeah, exactly. And let's be clear, that's what Bama does right now. They control their own destiny, which 3 weeks ago we would have begged and pleaded for a chance for Bama to control their own destiny. So, you can't be upset with it. And it's crazy because it feels like we're getting so close to the end of college football season, but we're not. And there's so much craziness still left to come. I was asking you the Heisman odds and looking back at last year's Heisman odds at this point. At multiple points in the last 3 weeks, Bo Nix and Michael Penix were favored to win the Heisman, right? Mm-hmm. And you got to think where you were with Jaden Daniels coming off playing Bama when he gets concussed and they lose. But then all of a sudden he circles back and is able to, close the season strong and has a good year. But it's just funny because you just never know how these things are going to end up. And you never know how the season's going to fin out. So hopefully, and I don't know how you feel, and we can talk about this next. I don't know how you feel about the Oklahoma game, but it's a dangerous game for Alabama in a lot of different ways. So hopefully they're focused on them.
Yeah, we'll get into that more. So Missouri plays Arkansas.
So there you go. Yeah, there you go. So
yeah, it's interesting, man. It is interesting to see how this thing unfolds all the way down to the end. But you're exactly right, man. There's a lot of football left to be played, and we haven't determined a whole lot other than Bama's come back to Bama and Georgia have come back to the pack. And some of the other teams have come up, but I still think Bama and Georgia are the 2 best. And if Texas loses to Texas A&M, guess what? They're the easiest one to leave out of the college football team.
I completely agree. Agree. No thanks.
Easy. Sorry, guys. You beat Bama, it's your best win. You're out.
Yeah.
They're not.
No, I completely agree with that, man. Wouldn't that be quite the tumble? Oh man. That'd be. No, I know the people. Oklahoma fans that we'd be talking about this weekend would love it, but I mean, it is what it is. You
think about it.
You have to play people. At some point, the College Football Playoff Committee, it has to value schedule, right? I mean, and that's what, and it's interesting we're talking about today because I think in the end, tonight is going to be very more indicative than the last couple of weeks of what that might look like. Because I think it is kind of rounding into form, and they're going to start kind of pushing teams around, saying, you know what, this one's up, this one's down. It is what it is, and I think they'll start kind of massaging that tonight based on what they, how they think the season might finish.
Mm-hmm. This is what I love though about having Texas in the conference is that Texas A&M game. I mean, it's like a Bama Auburn Iron Bowl when Auburn was good. That puts a lot more on the line. When it's a playing game to the SEC championship game, and really it could be even considered a playing game for the college football playoff. I think it is. That makes it fun. I hate to see that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State aren't playing their game. They got to get these. You got to play these
traditional.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's
tough, man. And look, I'm not so sure. I think, in my opinion, as soon as ESPN gets their money back together from where it probably should be, because I know they've kind of been, Bob Iger's been kind of redoing things. I think next year, might be the last year we see an 8-game slate in the SEC. I think you'll move to 9 games.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're kind of waiting for ESPN to pay up for that 9th game, but I really feel like you'll see a 9th SEC game eventually on the slate, and ESPN will pay for it. And with Texas and Oklahoma, they have no reason not to. And so that's going to make it even more difficult to keep South Carolina, Clemson, Florida State.
Yeah.
I mean, you go on down the list, it's going to be even more Georgia Tech, which is on a Friday this year, which is going to be interesting. So, yeah, it's going to be even more difficult to keep those all in line.
Well, it's been fun, man. We just did an entire show. We got into this. Is there something else that you want to add to the conversation before?
Something that I hadn't thought about. I was talking to one of my buddies earlier that went to Oklahoma, or he's an Oklahoma fan. I had not considered this. Bama and Oklahoma play at night this weekend. He mentioned to me the fact that Oklahoma is not really that good at night games yet. And I was like, what? And he was like, dude, we used to beg for one game a year, and I guess it was maybe Nebraska to be a night game, and now they're like all night games. And he was like, he said the Oklahoma people have been going around to some of the pageantry, and you're looking ahead to Baton Rouge next week and some of the other things you've seen, the Tennessee game that they've had this year, and I know they're looking at, and they're like, dude, these night games are nuts. Like at some of these stadiums, you watch Georgia this past weekend against Tennessee, and like all the pageantry and the light shows and the fireworks that you have at night. And he's like, Oklahoma's just not that familiar with the whole night game thing. So that was one of the things that kind of jumped out at me about this matchup. And I know we'll break it down further on Thursday when we get back together. But 14-point spread or whatever it is, and it's gonna be tough in a lot of different ways for Alabama. So I do rest easy on the fact that Oklahoma's not that good yet at night games, man. I thought that was so funny. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, interesting.
I hate so many. I'll be honest, man. I hate so many night games. And you know why? It's selfish. It's selfish. You and I used to team up on that awful post-game show on Tide Radio. What a bad job that was. We had to wait until the Crimson Tide Sports Network did their post-game show.
Yeah.
That thing was all it was commercial breaks. And then, an hour, 2 hours later, we come on, and then they want us to do like 2 hours or something. It was like
I can't tell you how nice it is to actually be a part of the network post-game show nowadays, like I do for the Atlanta Falcons, because I see my buddy over there that's doing the station post show like you're talking about. And I see him over in the corner in the bullpen, and he's just pacing with a cup of coffee, like, he almost done. So yeah, man, I'm with you. But it's funny, man. It's going to be an epic couple of weeks here. And that I hope that some Bama fans are able to make the trip up to Norman, because I know that's a cool spot, and I'm sure our buddy Colin will probably be headed that way. But yeah, nonetheless, man, interesting couple of weeks ahead of us.
We both do like the regular post games, but you can check out the Bama post game show right here on Cover Crimson. We go on right after the game. As a matter of fact, we went on during the game last time because it was an ass whooping. The last 2 weeks we've gone on during the game. Like, we're already taking calls and the game's not over yet. Because
we haven't even said the word Mercer today, by the way, which feels disrespectful, but kind of went exactly like you hoped it would. So I don't want to gloss over it, but there's not really much to talk about.
No, the touchdown they scored though was really good. But I'll tell you what, Ryan Williams, those 2 touchdowns he scored, you like watch him, and I just feel like he's like Prince playing football. Like he's just so different than everyone else. He's you know what I mean? He's painting his fingernails.
I was gonna say that had to have been a fingernail reference, man. There's no way I was gonna let you out from under that one.
But it's like his body, like he's just kind of like. It's almost like he's fluent, and he's just
like he's dancing while he's running around.
Like, who didn't love Prince? Who didn't love Prince, man? He's so special too.
Dude, you're cracking me up right now, man. I'm just picturing him like moonwalk into his crossing route. Just I don't know. I know.
He just floats.
Game blouses. Yeah.
Yeah, right. When Charlie Murphy was over there, and he's like Prince just draining.
Oh man, that's funny.
I love watching that guy, man. Like, and I don't even know that he's figured it out yet, but he's figuring it out. Like, think about when he like gets good at all the stuff that you got to be good at, other than just being magical.
We've got to figure out how to make sure that guy stays here for at least another 2 years. And I know that I hope he's happy. I hope that he's being taken care of financially, whatever that takes. But man, he is as special as they come. There is no doubt about that.
I think he will. They know better. Hey, guys, thanks for hanging out with us on the All-American Report. Couple things I want to tell you is with the holidays right here, right now, use the promo code ROOM20, rowback.com, 20% off of your first order. So take advantage of it. Rowback's got some amazing gear, some Alabama stuff as well. That's Room20. And also, we're brought to you by mybookie.ag. The promo code is next round on that one. And it's time to double your initial deposit. So many things going on. You got the NBA, you got college basketball, college football, NFL football, NASCAR. Mike's a big NASCAR guy. Mike, NASCAR is actually really fun to bet on, by the way.
I know. And especially with Daytona coming up. Daytona is one of those that there's always that one guy that can kind of jump up and sneak in. You can get some pretty good long odds if you pay attention to it. So that's always a fun one to bet on. That'll be, 2 months from now.
Yep, that's mybookie.ag. And also, guys, like, subscribe, thumbs up here on Cover Crimson, and then covercrimson.com. Now's the time to be part of that. I'm actually getting off here, going to the message board to talk to you guys, but appreciate everyone for being a part of what we do here. All right, we'll get back together on Thursday. Roll Tide, my friend.